Hey, what's up folks? This is Keith and you're watching Barber's Auto Help. In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the Serpentine belt tensioner on the 2012 to 2018 Ford Focus equipped with the naturally aspirated 2.0. Of course, before you get started, you want to ensure that the vehicle is not running. Be sure the vehicle is in park with the parking brake on. And then you want to disconnect the negative battery clamp from the battery and isolate it from the battery. Once this is done, you're ready to go. Now, in order to do this job, you don't have to totally remove the belts from the vehicle. However, if you're replacing the Serpentine belt tensioner, there's a good chance that by this time, the belts need to be replaced anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and include that information in this video. Now, as you can see, the AC belt is not present on this engine. So I wouldn't be able to show you how to remove and install the AC belt on this engine itself. However, I previously made a video on how to remove and install a stretchy belt. And the AC belt on this engine is what's called a stretchy belt. So I'll go ahead and cut to that video right now and we'll go through the removal process. Today I'm going to show you how to remove and install a stretchy belt, and we're going to be using this special tool right here. This is readily available online and in many parts stores. There's no shortage of these things and they're pretty cheap. I'll post a link in the description down below to this, and by the way, this is my own. I bought it with my own money. I just think it's a really great tool and it really helps with these stretchy belts. So you probably already noticed, you see you got this remove written on this side here, and then on the other side you have install. So you're going to be using the remove side, of course, to remove it. And you see you got that little cleft right there that fits right over your pulley like so. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn our crank and work that thing in there, and that's going to pull the belt right off. Alright, we're going to go ahead and turn this crank pulley, and while we're doing that, we're going to kind of assist this belt onto this tool, and it's just going to slide it right off the front of the pulley. Go. Now, while the removal and installation procedure for the stretchy belt is similar on the Ford Focus, it's not exactly the same as what you just saw. One of the main differences is you'll have to do this from the underside of the vehicle. Of course, to do it, you'll have to jack the vehicle up in the front end, be sure that your rear tires are chocked and that your parking brake is on, and do use jack stands. Once the vehicle is jacked up in the front end, you can then remove the splash shield that is up underneath the engine. Once the splash shield is removed, you can get right to the stretchy belt. Once the stretchy belt is out of the way, you can then turn your attention to removing the Serpentine belt. In order to do that, you have to take the tension off of the belt. You'll notice on the Serpentine belt tensioner that there's a dummy nut just up underneath the pulley of the Serpentine belt tensioner. This dummy nut receives a 14mm socket. Place the socket on the dummy nut and rotate the ratchet counterclockwise to release tension. Once the tension is released, you can then remove the belt. Now, another way of releasing the tension from the Serpentine belt would be to take an open-end 14mm wrench to the top of the tensioner. The top of the tensioner right here receives a 14mm perfectly. Once you put the wrench on the end of the Serpentine belt tensioner, you can then rotate it counterclockwise, and that will release the tension on the belt, and then you can remove the belt. Now, as mentioned earlier, you don't have to remove the belts totally in order to do this job. You could actually leave the stretchy belt on and leave the Serpentine belt on halfway. You just got to get it off the tensioner in order to replace the tensioner. So you could leave the Serpentine belt in place, go ahead and replace the tensioner, and then put the same Serpentine belt back onto the new tensioner. The tensioner is held on by two bolts and they have 10mm heads on them. I find that a deep well 10mm socket works best to remove these bolts. Go ahead and remove both of the bolts. Once the bolts are removed, you can take the tensioner right off. Take your new tensioner and you'll notice that there's a little dowel inside the tensioner. The dowel portion of the tensioner goes into the top of the head there. Place the new tensioner onto the head and start your bolts by hand. Once the bolts are ran down by hand all the way, you can then torque the bolts to specification. Now, when it comes time to putting the Serpentine belt back on or installing a new belt, I find it most helpful to go ahead and route the belt around all of the pulleys except for the water pump. You're going to have the belt ran in front of the water pump, and you're going to hold it there with one hand while you take your other hand and put the wrench back onto the tensioner or the socket and then rotate the tensioner counterclockwise. Once the tensioner is rotated counterclockwise, then you can run the belt over the water pump pulley the rest of the way, and then you can release the tensioner. Once the tensioner is released and tension is placed on the serpentine belt, ensure that you have the belt routed correctly around all of the pulleys. At this point, if you removed your stretchy belt, you'll need to reinstall it at this time or put a new stretchy belt on at this time. I'll go ahead and cut to the video showing how to install the stretchy belt. Now the installation, of course, is the reverse procedure, and you can see on this side it says install. So we're going to put the install side up like that, and there's a cleft on it right there. Sit it right there. Take your belt, go ahead and run it on your other pulleys and end with the pulley that you're using the tool on. Go ahead and assist it and run it up just a little bit there. Keep the belt in the grooves on the other pulleys while you're doing this. Alright, so we got it kind of taut right now. And we're just going to do the same thing we did earlier with the crank pulley. We're just going to turn it until the belt is ran on, and assist the belt on your other pulleys to make sure that it doesn't come out of the grooves on the other pulleys. So just rotate that just like this. There you go. At this point, folks, you're near about done. If you jacked up the front end of your vehicle, go ahead and reinstall your splash shield, and then take the vehicle down off the jack stands, remove your tire chocks and such, and reconnect your negative battery clamp to the battery, and then start the vehicle up, and then shut the vehicle down and recheck your belt routing. If everything looks okay, you should be good to go. Folks, I sincerely hope that this helped somebody. If it helped you, please give the video a like. Also, please consider subscribing to my channel. And folks, as always, please read the entire description down below this video before you apply any of this knowledge. There may be some things I need to clarify, and that's where I do that. Also, please read the disclaimer at the very end of it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a good one.